What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you an update to Lightsworns. Now, as a disclaimer on this particular build is I've tried to keep it as pure focused as possible, and obviously there is only as so far that pure can get you in today's game, but what I've tried to avoid doing with this deck is involve the actual Themesmith engraver. I wanted to avoid Dragon Link going ham, and I wanted to avoid stuff like the Horus engine so that it didn't just become a 60 card pile. The idea behind this deck is to still utilise the Lightsworn cards as their main aspect, to get you the mills, to get you the draws, and then lead you into the extra deck. It does involve a very small Fabled engine as well, as I wanted to try and keep it a little bit more themed and a little bit more fun. However, once the Banlist drops, I'll be more than happy to update this deck, as this deck can definitely have a huge amount of potential going forward, depending on what else it gets back. You could look at stuff like the Chaos Dragon, highly unlikely that level 8 is coming back, but just an option. And then of course you do have the tier element cards that you can add into this deck as well. So you do have a space of about 20 additional cards that you can add into this deck, should you wish to make it even better and even more successful. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. With all of that out of the way, I'm just going to dive headfirst into the profile, show you what we've got, and explain why we've got it. So for the Lightsworns, we're starting off with triple of the Draglin. It's pretty standard on most of the Lightsworns, but I will go through all of the effects in case you are new to the deck as well. So this one is if you have a Lightsworn monster in your graveyard, you get to special summon it from the hand. Pretty nice. But then if it is special summoned, you also get to send a Lightsworn card from the deck to the graveyard except itself. If it is sent to the graveyard, you get to add a dragon monster with 3000 attack and 2600 defense from the deck to the hand. So obviously Judgment Dragon or Punishment Dragon. And then of course we've got Free Waste. Now this is my favourite card because obviously it is the overlap between the Lightsworn and the Dark Worlds. But on top of that as well, it's just an incredibly good card for the deck. So it's a Fiend Light Tuner. That may sound familiar because this is part of what you'll need for like a mini Lightsworn Themesmith overlap bit. So you can place one other Lightsworn card from your hand on the top of the deck to special summon this card from the hand. Then you get to send the top two cards of your deck to the graveyard. So the best thing about that ability is it lets you stack some of your Lightsworn cards that you don't want to be seeing in your hand, hello Wolf and Felice, put them back to the top of the deck and then automatically mill them. It's not as if it shuffles it into the deck, it gives you a guaranteed mill, which then leads you into a rank 4 or a level 8 synchro, mainly being the Minerva Athena, and this is just going to get you more mills and everything else in between. If it is sent to the graveyard again, you get to target a Lightsworn monster in your graveyard, accept itself, and then special summon it. So again, you're going to have so much utility because you get to use each of those effects once per turn. And then of course you've got Triple Wolf, pretty much the one you never want to see in your hand, but you guarantee always will, but you always want to mill it. As this one is different from Felice. This one is just if it is sent from the deck to the graveyard by any means necessary, it will summon itself back. Whereas Felice is specifically if it is sent via a monster effect, it will summon itself back. So that's just one thing you need to keep in mind, but you're still going to be playing 2 Felice because you have more ways of getting it to the graveyard with stuff like your Weiss, with stuff like your Draglin, and of course with stuff like your Minerva as well. And then of course we've got 2 Raiden. I still use this as the main normal summon of the deck. You can use Graph as well because that gives you the ability to mill 2 and draw a card every time a monster is sent from the deck to the graveyard via a Lightsworn monster effect, which can be very useful in this particular version. I decided to go with the original Minerva, but this one can very easily be the Graph just because I want this to be my mill, whereas Graph doesn't really have that mill. So it's kind of entirely up to you on that one. Last ones we've got is the 1 Lumina and then followed up by the 1 Punishment and the 1 Judgment. Now obviously the one thing that I would want to change with this deck once you start involving the Chaos cards, and basically what I'm going to do with this video-esque is I'm going to show you the baseline of the Lightsworns you can go for, and then the next version I'll show you what happens when you add in the Chaos cards. The next version after that I can show you what happens when you add in the Zombie cards, and you can just see like a general progression of how the Lightsworns can evolve over time depending on what you want to add into the deck and everything else. So obviously the card you would add into this would be the Safer Dragon, and the idea behind the Safer Dragon is it allows you to add back your Punishment and Judgments once they're milled. We are not playing Enlightenment Dragon in this build, but you can do very easily. It's just something that I didn't feel was massively necessary, and I still wanted to give the deck a fighting edge as well as just being able to be played as relatively pure as possible. For Lumina as well, because I kind of jumped over this one lets you discard a card to target a level 4 or lower Lightsworn in the graveyard, and then special summon the target. And then during each of your end phases, again, you mill the top 3 cards of your deck. You must control this face-up card to activate and resolve this effect. But the other is this is just a level 3 monster that you get down onto the board, uses effect to discard a card, which can, as long as you already have a Lightsworn target in the graveyard, the card you discard is a card you can bring back if you want to. And that's just how you can get into like Raiden, and then Raiden mills 2, and then kind of builds on from there. And then for the non-Lightsworn cards, we do play the one Medora and the one Keldo, purely because of the graveyard recyclability. So this is obviously the main way that you can get your Judgment and your punishment back if you need to, but it can also recycle your other cards. Again, like I said, when you go down the Chaos route, this will be more effective for you. And then of course we've got a small danger package of 2 Mothman and 1 Nessie. Again, you can make this bigger if you want to, you can make it smaller. Like I said, this is where spaces start to be flexed for the option of your Chaos cards. But the idea behind these is there will be times in a pure-ish build of Lightsworns like this that you will not open up the most ideal hand, so you will need to take the gamble off of resolving a danger. Like I said at the start of the video, this is not the ideal way to play Lightsworns. This is probably just like the baseline way of playing Lightsworns, and then you'll work your way up from there. And then you've just got generic millers that are going to help you extend your board. So you've got your Trick Clown, we've got 3 Mally, and then carrying on with the, well, I suppose the last monster we play, and then we'll move into the tracks actually. It's the one Fabled Raven. This is just an alternative target that you can search off of the back of your Fiendsmith Tract. Now the reason you play Fiendsmith Tract in here is it lets you add a light fiend. So obviously your ideal target will of course be your Weiss, because then Weiss can be added off of the back of this, and then you can discard any other card, which is going to give you a nice little bit of a benefit, especially if you want to set up some of your other Lightsworn plays. But the idea is that this can also search you out a Fabled Raven, and the reason you do that is you get a level 2 monster that can just help you discard cards from your hand to increase its level. You can go for Fabled Lorry if you want to, but because we're so close to the ban list, I'm expecting that there may be a hit on that card. I don't know, it's just speculation, but I didn't want to provide you with a profile that was going to drastically change or would fall apart if it missed a core card. So I like the idea of Fabled Raven. It does give you more options to get you into more synchro plays if you want to. It really is up to you. But ultimately, you can just cut this and play free tracked, and if you do have options for an engraver, you'd probably take out the Raven and add in an engraver, and then that would adapt your extra deck a little bit more as well. But like I said, I wanted to avoid playing the engraver because I know it's like a £60 card, and some people with Lightsworns want to try and keep it relatively cheap because they already have the Lightsworn cards, and they didn't want to be going out and spending 60, 70, £80 per engraver. Moving on to the rest of the Lightsworn cards, we are playing triple Solar Recharge. Love this card in this deck. It's obviously more important in this particular version because you are playing so many more Lightsworn builds, Lightsworn cards. And like I said at the start, I didn't want this build to be here. Here's 10 Lightsworn cards, and then the remaining 50 cards of the deck are like 10 Chaos cards, 10 Tier Element cards, 10 zombie cards, 10 more mill cards. I wanted it to be majority is Lightsworn. You focus on Lightsworns, you're playing through the Lightsworns, and everything else in between is what's kind of helping support the Lightsworns themselves. So free charge of Light Brigade, discard a Lightsworn, draw 2, and then send top 2 from the deck to the graveyard. Free charge of the Light Brigade, so send the top 3 cards of your deck to graveyard, add a level 4 or lower Lightsworn from the deck to the hand. So obviously because you've got Tract is obviously going to search out your Weiss, so then you've got your charge which can start searching out your Draglin or anything else you might need to. So technically when you're looking at this, all of your Lightsworn counts are up by 1, or technically up by 3, and then in the form of Raiden you're also up by an additional 1 because Reinforcement of the Army can search it. With most of my Lightsworn builds, I still like to play Reasoning. Of course, it's a little bit easier now for my opponent because most of them are level 4s. But the way that I see it is even if they call correctly, I'm still going to get an additional Foolish Berry. So if I end up hitting a wolf, great success, I get an extension. More times than not, that's something that you could very easily cut out if you wanted to. And the last one, Foolish Burial, and then of course the Lightsworn Argius, just because this is going to allow you to add back. If it's sent to the graveyard, you get to add it back or reset it to the board, and it does act as a very nice ability to negate cards as well, depending on how many Lightsworn monsters you have, which in this version, because you're planning to keep more Lightsworns on the board, is going to be more successful than not. So that's it for the entire main deck. Moving on to the extra deck, of course, for the Synchro, we do have the one Minerva Athena Lightsworn. So this one is the ideal card. Like, this is such a great addition for the deck that we got way back when. So this one is generic level 8. Lightsworn monsters you control cannot be banished by card effects, and you can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If this card is Synchro summoned, you get to send Lightsworn monsters with different types from the deck to the graveyard, up to the number of Lightsworn monsters used as this card's material. Now, more times than not, you're going to be using 2 Lightsworn monsters, and then more times than not, the card you're going to want to send could ultimately end up being a Weiss and a Wolf, because it's a Beast Warrior and a Fiend. They will both summon themselves back, or technically, Wolf will summon itself back, and then Weiss will summon back one of the materials that was used for the Synchro summon of Minerva, and then that gives you options for either a rank 4, or depending if it was a tunic you were able to revive, will also give you the option to go into more Synchros. Carrying on with the Synchros, I am trialing out the one Groza. Now this one's actually a little bit more specific because it does require a non-tuner Fiend, which you don't have any in the main deck. The only non-tuner Fiend that you can use to make this will be your Andraith. And the reason I wanted to play the Andraith is if it is special, your opponent can discard a card to negate this effect. Otherwise, you draw 2 cards and discard a card. And then if a monster is sent from your opponent's hand to the graveyard, etc. in damage state, you get to target one of those monsters and special summon it to your field. And obviously this is going to be more ideal in a Dark World version, but I still like the idea that you could utilise this if you wanted to. Otherwise, these become two very easy flex spots. Once you put in the Bestials, one of these becomes Bestial Dispatter, and then the other one could become any generic synchro that you want to be looking into. It really is up to you. I just wanted to kind of show off these options with a small Fabled engine if you wanted to consider them. Groza has the ability to discard a card as effect during your opponent's turn to negate an effect, and then on top of that as well, it also gains an additional effect that it can't be destroyed by the opponent's card effect, your opponent cannot target it, or it cannot be destroyed by battle, so you get a nice little bit of a mini boss monster there. You don't have to play these, like I'm saying, these two are just options for you to look at, or even go, wow, I didn't even know they existed, maybe it's something I'm happy to play around with. You've then got the one Michael, the one Chaos Angel, and the one Chenying. So obviously the idea behind these is these are two generic level 10s, or this one mainly is with Lights and Darks, which is exactly easy what you're going to be doing. This can actually be made with like a Raiden plus a Lumina, and it just gives you additional mills and additional board clearance if you need to. Omega, just be able to recycle some of your banished cards, which is very easy to do, while also ripping from your opponent's hand. When you do involve the Bestials and Bestial Dispatter, you actually get to rip 2 from your opponent's hand, and then that's where this can kind of combo off quite nicely, even more so, because every time a card is ripped from your opponent's hand, as long as it is discarded, and that's all it needs to be done, then you get to be able to use an effect. So specifically if it's a monster, and it will have to go to the graveyard, but the idea is that Omega will rip 2, and then if you are discarding more from the hand as well, you're going to be basically ripping from your opponent's hand more and more. It's not a hand loop that you want to be doing, but it's just something that you could consider if you are going to be utilising this, especially if you put Trill Tactics in the main deck, but you would have to adapt your strategy so that you are specifically trying to take cards from your opponent's hand. And keeping in mind, if your opponent discards a card to negate your draw 2 and grab 1, they need to make sure they're sending a spell, not a monster, because if they send a monster, you're just going to, okay, cool, revive and go from there. The last synchro I'm trying out is the Shen. Now I know this does hurt yours a little bit, but the idea is that you're going to be putting this on your end board, and you're basically saying to your opponent, okay, any card you send from the field to the graveyard is going to be banished instead. The cards that I'm sending from my field to the graveyard aren't really going to be banished, because the ones that do leave my field are either going to banish themselves anyway, or they're not going to be leaving the field as normal. They're going to be leaving the field as a overlay material, which doesn't leave the field, which goes to the graveyard. Or if it's a synchro monster goes to the graveyard, it's absolutely fine because I've pretty much already done what I need to do. So they're going to be focusing on trying to get rid of the Shen first, because it will become a bigger issue for them, and then you can very easily cycle back the Shen at the end of your next turn, or if you need that additional damage, because you're going to have loads of monsters with different types and attributes in your graveyard. Moving on to the XYZ, so we only play 3 XYZs. We play Evil Sword Lars, just generic rank 6, which is going to give you that Omni Negate. So whether you use 2 Mallies, whether you use the Lacrima plus it as well, it will become more consistent if you do play the Fiendsmith Engraver. But like I said, this is just an option for you to look at. This extra is completely flexible because it will change massively once you start upgrading and going into Zombie Swarms, once you start going into Chaos Swarms, you name it. Beatrice, if this gets banned, you're probably going to be going for the Pilgrim, because Pilgrim will let both players mill the top 5 cards of their deck, and this is just a one for a direct send, but this is why it's one that I was like, alright, this might dice on the edge of the ban list. If it survives, don't know how it survives, but if it does, you still use it. If it doesn't, you swap it out straight for Pilgrim. And then of course you've got the good old rank 4 Minerva as well. And then for the links leading into fusions, we play the one sequence. The only fusion monster we are playing is the Lacrima. So this will allow you to recycle your Light Fiends, which will be Weiss, which will be your Fabled Raven, and then it can also recycle your Synchro in the form of the Andraith as well. Not to mention that Andraith is a level 6. So what you've got to remember as well is Lacrima lets you bring back any Light Fiend monster. So if you were to make this to draw 2, ditch 1, and then use this as link fodder to get you into your sequence, then of course you can use Lacrima to spin back 2 light monsters except itself, and then Lacrima can bring it back, and that's straight away how you're going to be able to get a rank 6 play as well. And then the final 2, we've got IP and Appaloosa. Again, these might be 2 that are dicing on the edge of the ban list. Whether it actually happens or not is entirely time to tell, but I wanted to kind of, again, show you a baseline. Don't go out and rush to buy all these cards. Just use this and be like, oh, right, that's what a baseline of Lightsworns will look like. I've actually got zombies lying around, so I'd like to see the zombie build. Or I've actually got tier elements lying around ready to go for the next format. What can I do with that one? I've got Chaos Swans. I just wanted to show you, like, specifically with the Light of Judgment set being reprinted, most people are going to have the Lightsworn cards, and then you can pick up the new ones relatively cheaply and easily to add to the Lightsworn deck. So you're going to have those. It's just then knowing what the next step is after that and what the next version is after that, so that you can work around with it and kind of decide which way you want to go. Anyway, I hope this has given you a baseline idea, introduction into Lightsworn, and giving you a kind of idea of how it works. Like I said, there's so many different engines you can add to this. The Horus, the tier elements, zombies, it goes on and on and on and on. So let me know what version you would like to see updated next, and I'll bring that to you. We're basically going to try and use this as like a progression series to go, right, okay, this is Lightsworn's at its base level, this is the next version, the version after that, and how it kind of evolves and grows and goes from there. Because I do think this deck can compete next format, depending on what happens to the ban list. All it needs to do is dodge a shifter, and if shifter gets hit on the ban list, all speculation right now, then this deck will pretty much thrive, and it'll be one of the ones that will be at the top end of the tables. So it's something you need to keep an eye on as well. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, as absolutely always, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.